Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alison Lagrange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south. Join me every weekday live on First Post. Hello and welcome to First Post Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alison Lagrange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Lebanon-based Hezbollah threatens to escalate the war against Israel into a new phase. This after Israel killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar in Gaza yesterday. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to visit Russia next week for the BRICS summit on invitation of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is scheduled to hold bilateral talks with his Russian counterpart. South Africa orders Taiwan's representative office to relocate outside the capital, Pretoria. Taiwan blames Chinese pressure for the relocation order. US President Joe Biden receives Germany's highest Order of Merit as he visits Berlin. During his visit, Biden will meet other NATO allies to discuss Russia's war against Ukraine. And thousands dressed in white protest against growing cartel violence in Mexico. This after 2 mayors were brutally killed by cartel members in the Latin American nation in a span of 10 days. Hello and welcome. Our top story is from Kenya, where in a historic move, President William Ruto's deputy has been ousted by the parliament. For the very first time, a sitting deputy president has been impeached in Kenya. The move comes at a sensitive time in Kenyan politics when people are already frustrated with the government, which is seemingly having its own troubles within. Kenyan Senate, which is the upper house of parliament, voted to dismiss Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua from office on Thursday. 54 out of 67 senators voted to impeach Gachagua, which is more than the two-thirds majority required. Now, last week, the lower house also voted to impeach the deputy president, and this effectively removes Rigathi Gachagua from the second highest post in Kenya.
The Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. Accordingly, His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, EGH, ceases to hold office.
The Senate was voting on 11 charges leveled against the Deputy President. Now, these include corruption, insubordination, money laundering, undermining the government, practicing ethnically divisive politics, bullying public officers, threatening a judge, and being involved in recent anti-government protests. The Senate only had to find him guilty of one charge to remove him from office, but the lawmakers found him guilty on 5 charges. Gachagua had pleaded not guilty to all of the charges, but when he got the chance to defend himself in the Senate, he backed out last minute due to an abrupt illness. His lawyer said that Gachagua had been hospitalised due to severe chest pains and urged the Senate to delay the proceedings. But that did not convince the lawmakers, who carried on with the impeachment proceedings. These developments unfolded in high drama in the Kenyan Senate, with Gachagua's lawyers walking out in protest. They argued that he had a constitutional right to testify in his defense.
It's unfortunate that our client is unwell, and we wish the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya a quick recovery. You heard what, or you have witnessed what has transpired in Parliament today. The Senate has decided to sit in the absentia of our client.
While Gachagua failed to fight in Parliament, he is doing it in the courts. He challenged his removal in a high court that has responded in his favour. The court has suspended his impeachment by the Senate. The court judge has issued a conservatory order, noting that the case raises serious constitutional issues. The order mandates that the process to fill the deputy president position must be halted until the 24th of October. Now, this comes after President William Ruto had already picked his new deputy. He had nominated the Interior Minister, Kithure Kindiki, as his deputy. Throughout the impeachment proceedings, Ruto had maintained his silence, but it was visible that the ex-deputy president was sidelined. He had been missing from state events and from accompanying the President Ruto at key functions. A rift between President Ruto and Gachagua had been out in the open. Now popularly known as Riggy G, Gachagua is a 59-year-old former businessman and multi-millionaire. He belongs to the Mount Kenya region. Ahead of the 2022 polls, he decided to side with William Ruto, who was then the Kenya's deputy president. In a similar development, the then deputy, Ruto, also had a falling out with his president. Gachagua was facing legal troubles when he lent support to President Ruto. He had also been arrested multiple times on corruption charges. But navigating those troubles, he then continued his campaign for Ruto, amassed a big chunk of votes for him, which helped him to win the 2022 presidential elections. Now, the charges against him were also dropped after that. So what turned relations between the two sour? Now, reports suggest that everything is rooted in Kenya's recent anti-tax protests, which turned into a mass campaign against Ruto and his government. At least 50 people died in the protests, and Gachagua has been accused of having a role in the protests. Things also worsened for him after Ruto joined hands with the opposition members in a bid to appease the protesters and formed a broad-based government. So members of the camp, which once Gachagua ditched to rally for Ruto, became a part of the government. And since then, Gachagua has complained of being sidelined. Ruto was reportedly already delegating some of the deputy president's tasks to the interior minister, who has now been chosen to replace him. Incidentally, the Interior Minister, Kithure Kindiki, also belongs to Mount Kenya. Now, while Kenya goes through this complex political period, many in the country see this as a way for the government to distract the public from issues surrounding economy and governance. How will this historic impeachment have consequences for the nation, which is seen as one of the stable democracies in the continent? Now, for more on this, we have with us Mark Bichachi, a political strategist who is joining us live from Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with, what are the constitutional and legal grounds for impeaching the deputy president, and how do they compare to these other high-profile impeachments in the region?
Well, first and foremost, the deputy president was accused of financial impropriety, undermining the presidency, undermining devolution, bullying of the state officials, as well as the judiciary, among very many other charges. But at the core of this impeachment process was a political rift between himself and the president, between his ideas of how Kenya should be run and versus what the president was doing. And this is not something new in terms of how Kenya usually operates. It's something that even happened between the current president and his former boss. Unfortunately, for Rigathi Gachagua, the patience was thin, especially given what the president had gone through with the Gen Z protests that had happened. So what was happening now is a president who really needed to make sure that his inner circle is loyal. And therefore, this impeachment was orchestrated to be able to ensure that his cabinet and his leadership is secure, given the kind of tensions that have been there in the country.
Right. And what political dynamics or alliances within Parliament are influencing the impeachment process? And how do they reflect the current state of Kenyan politics?
Well, you ask a critical question because as we sit here today, the main opposition party, ODM, was totally voting together with the ruling party. They already have members within the cabinet, and therefore it seems as if there is an unofficial alliance between the party that was previously led by Raila Odinga and the president, and this is how they were easily able to get 2/3 of the votes in both houses. So what happens now is the president, William Ruto, has put together one of the largest political coalitions, giving him quite large influence and control over both houses of parliament. The opposition is struggling to find its own footing, but Raila Odinga, who is cooperating with the president, is still the head of the coalition called Azimio. So it's an interesting time for Kenya, but the chips seem to be falling in favor of the president, William Ruto.
And just quickly, how might the Deputy President's hospitalization with his severe chest pains, preventing him from testifying in his own defense, influence the impeachment proceedings?
Well, it's actually quite an interesting thing. So if you take it that he was really ill, we do wish him well, but many pundits, and I'm inclined to believe this, that this was a tactic to either achieve a number of things. One, to achieve a delay in his hearing, which would have made the constitutional timeline of 10 days lapse, creating a constitutional issue which he could use in court. Two was to create a situation where the Senate, as it happened, did not get to hear his testimony, and that then becomes a ground for him to go to court. But it must be clear that in as much as the courts have now spoken and suspended his impeachment and suspended his replacement, really there is very little that he can achieve within the next 3 years, because if he wins any of the cases, then the government and legislature will appeal, and then it will be a long drawn process. So for all intents and purposes, the court action that he's taking is going to be more of his political survival than it is going to succeed in actually reversing his impeachment.
Right. Mark, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa, and we will continue to monitor how this impeachment will impact Kenya's governance.
Thank you for having me.
Staying on with East Africa, where Somalia continues to face terror attacks linked to Al-Shabaab. In the latest, at least 7 people have died and nearly 10 injured in a suicide bombing in the capital, Mogadishu. The attack was targeted on a police academy in the capital. The suicide bomber detonated an unidentified device at a cafe outside the academy. The incident took place while people had gathered to enjoy tea at the cafe, and the explosion killed police officers and civilians. A renowned Somali poet is also believed to be among the victims.
There were people who suspected the suicide bomber as he carried something, questioning what the man, whom we didn't know, was doing. After hearing their concerns, he immediately blew himself up, resulting in deaths and injuries, as you can imagine.
The Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab Islamist group has claimed responsibility for the bombing. Somali forces have been fighting the terror group for years, which has carried out numerous attacks in Mogadishu and other parts of the country. The Islamist group was formed in 2006 as a youth militia to fight Ethiopian invasion and occupation of Somalia. However, the group has now morphed into a full-fledged insurgency seeking control of Somalian territory. It publicly pledged loyalty to Al-Qaeda in 2012 and is now working to overthrow the Somali federal government. The group says it wants to establish a fundamentalist Islamic state. The group maintains a stronghold in southern Somalia and has carried out attacks that have killed thousands so far. In August this year, at least 37 people were killed in an Al-Shabaab attack on a busy beach in the capital. An Al-Shabaab suicide bomber accompanied with gunmen attacked the popular Lido beach in Mogadishu, resulting in one of the deadliest terror attacks in the East African country in recent months. In the aftermath, several Somalis, including senior government officials, staged demonstrations in the capital in a strong condemnation of the attack.
What had happened here was mass killing, and it is a national disaster, and someone needs to be accountable for it. I advise all Somali youth to be alert to what is going on in Mogadishu. We must defend our country from such enemies, and we must protect our people from such actions which keep recurring.
Now, the Somali government has heavily relied on the support from foreign troops to stay in power. The government is currently assessing a possible takeover of the security responsibility from the African Union transition mission in Somalia to its forces in December. Now, Somalia also appointed a new police chief last month in an attempt to launch a new strategy to fight Islamic extremism. However, continued attacks highlight that Somalia continues to remain in the grip of terrorism. Now, it seems that faster and newer generation fighter jets might soon take to the skies of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Reports say the DRC has been in talks with India to potentially acquire the Tejas Mark 1 multi-role combat aircraft. In August this year, there was a high-level delegation that visited India. The DRC's Air Force, or the FAC, engaged in discussions with the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, or HAL. It is believed that the discussions were centered around the performance and capabilities of the Tejas Mark 1 aircraft, including its ability to undertake air-to-air combat, ground attack, and reconnaissance missions. The Tejas is a 4.5 generation combat aircraft, which is currently manufactured by India and has been operated by the Indian Air Force since 2015. But why is the DRC interested in acquiring new fighter jets? The Congolese Air Force is among many air powers in Africa which still operates old Soviet-era fighter jets. Maintaining and upgrading them is a difficult task due to lack of spare parts and expertise. The FAC has only 2 sets of combat aircrafts in its inventory. They are the MiG-23 aircraft and the Sukhoi 25 jets. Put together, their total is just about 7 combat aircrafts, and that is in contrast to the 32 combat helicopters which the FAC is currently operating. And now the FAC's 6 Su-25 aircraft have been in service for decades, and the aircraft has also been showing signs of wear and tear. To bolster their capabilities in a challenging security environment, the FAC has been exploring options for acquiring multi-role fighter aircrafts. But how much has the DRC's government been spending on the military? And why does it want to modernize its air force now? Now, in 2023, the DRC recorded the biggest percentage increase in military spending in the world. Spending more than doubled to reach $794 million. In 2022, the government had only spent $371 million. But what is the reason for this? Growing tensions with Rwanda is one of them. DRC has accused its eastern neighbor of backing the armed M23 rebels with sophisticated arms and weapons. A surge in clashes with the armed M23 rebels has seen a rise in the DRC's military expenditure. And finally, the government wants to strengthen the defense forces after it demanded the early withdrawal of the United Nations peacekeeping mission from the country. In this given security environment, it seems like the DRC is looking to trust India with modern weapons. The reasons for this are not difficult to guess. Firstly, India offers affordable weapons, allowing DRC to have superior air power at cheaper prices. Secondly, India is ready to provide maintenance and support for the jets, which further enhances the reliability. Third is the growing anti-West sentiment in Africa. Western military equipment is way too expensive and often offered with political conditions, which the African nations do not want currently. Fourth, many African countries might not want to opt for China's JF-17 Thunder aircraft that is co-manufacturing with Pakistan. However, the co-produced jet struggles with technical malfunctions, as reported by Myanmar. Nigeria also has the JF-17 jets, but they are not willing to order more than 3. And a fifth reason could be that the African countries are not wanting to reach out to Russia, as the ongoing war with Ukraine has constrained Moscow's production capabilities. Still, this leaves one question unanswered. Has India ever supplied weapons to the DRC? The answer is no. Yet, India has been among the top contributors to the UN peacekeeping missions in the DRC. New Delhi has gained the trust of the African nation. Now, the DRC is not the only African country interested in the Tejas fighter aircraft. Reports suggest that Nigeria, Egypt and Botswana have also shown interest in acquiring the aircraft. While the security landscape around the DRC continues to evolve, it is yet to be seen whether the DRC would place an order for the Indian jets to fulfill its security needs. And finally, to our special segment, Resurgent Africa. Amid the coups and the crises, there are many positive stories from Africa that often get overlooked, but not on this show. Our final story today is from Nigeria. The quiet town of Igboora in southwestern Nigeria, known for its exceptionally high twin birth rate, comes alive each year with the vibrant Twins Festival. The 5-day celebration honors the unique bond between twins, a phenomenon deeply rooted in local culture. While some locals credit the town's high twin birth rate to a special diet, medical experts believe that genetics plays a larger role. Our Twin Tale gets you all the details.
In a world where identical faces often blur together, the quiet town of Igboora in southwest Nigeria transforms each year into a vibrant celebration of uniqueness at the annual Twins Festival. This 5-day event is not just a local gathering, but a tribute to the extraordinary bond shared by twins, a phenomenon that runs deep in the culture and history of the Yoruba people. The festival is a sight to behold. Twins of all ages, dressed in matching outfits, are paraded through the town as pairs, accompanied by drummers, dancers, and an outpouring of joy. The streets of Igboora come alive with laughter, music, and colorful displays, all dedicated to the remarkable tradition of twin births that has earned this town global recognition. One of the festival's attendees, Opayemi Daniel, is no stranger to the magic of twins. Growing up as the only single-born child among 5 sets of twins in her family, she has long been fascinated by their connection. Now, as a mother of twin girls, Opayemi celebrates their special bond with pride.
I had a special interest for twins when we were young. I am the only one that is not a twin among my mother's children. My mother had twins 5 times. I used to be happy when I saw them. So I hoped that when I also have twins, I will endow them with the same clothes and same shoes. So I wanted twins, and I have them now.
Twins are more than just common in this region. They are an integral part of the Yoruba identity. According to a 1970 study by a British gynecologist, the southwest region of Nigeria, dominated by the Yoruba ethnic group, has one of the highest twin birth rates in the world, with around 50 sets of twins born out of every 1,000 births. Igbo Ora's king, Jimo Olajide Titilayo, takes pride in his town's distinction.
All the household here, or each house, each compound, has twins in their midst. And this is something unique that if you call Kande, you see so many Kande looking at your direction. The same thing happens to Taiwo too.
Some locals attribute the high rate of twin births to a special diet, including okra leaves and amala, a popular dish made from yam and cassava flour. However, medical experts suggest that genetics are more likely responsible for this unique phenomenon. Scientists have long studied Igbo Ora to understand the prevalence of twins, and genetics appears to be the primary factor. Igbo Ora may be a small town, but its impact through the sheer number of twins and the strength of its cultural heritage resonates far beyond Nigeria's borders. In a world where sameness can often overshadow individuality, this festival reminds us that even in similarity, there is something uniquely powerful worth celebrating.
And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again at the same time on Monday. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend and goodbye.